Up next, we're chatting to a life coach, Sister Adila Vahed, in studio with us today. And today's topic is the emotional price of financial control. What does this mean? Well, money is a common cause of conflict in marriages, but it's really just about the rands and the cents. The truth is that behind every financial decision or disagreement are emotions, power dynamics, and deeply ingrained beliefs. Now, when financial control or selfishness enters a relationship, it doesn't just strain one's bank account. It impacts mental as well as emotional wellness. Now, Sister Adila Vahed, a mental and emotional wellness coach specializing in relationships, is back to unpack the hidden layers of financial behavior in marriage. So join us as we explore how fear, insecurity, and societal norms shape our approach to money, how and what steps couples can take and to heal and build healthier partnerships. We'll give the sisters about a minute to call the hubbies to listen in. So you're listening on the show. Listen on the show.
Very good idea. How are you doing, Zahir?
Alhamdulillah. So good to have you back, Sister Adila.
Alhamdulillah. Always lovely being here.
Awesome
so
stuff.
before we discuss the deeper emotional and psychological factors, right? While we're giving the ladies some time to get their husbands online. These factors that create the financial selfishness. Let me give the listeners some examples, some background of what we're actually talking about this afternoon. So I'm going to provide two scenarios to be fair to both the husband and the wife. There are many, many husbands that exists within our Muslim community that have enough money to go around. They are successful in their businesses or their employ. They are not short of money, to say the least. And we're specifically talking about this type of spouse. However, they find it painful, to say the least, to part with their money. Not necessarily with outsiders, but with their own spouses. These men hold their wives accountable for every rand and every cent that they give them. They find it difficult to part with the money, even if it is for the benefit of the children and the household. They want the wife to be held accountable. So what did you do with the budget that I gave you? Why are you asking me for more? These men complain constantly about how the cost of living is so high, how they need to pay for this, that, and the other. And the wife is taking too much of money from him. And even if it's spending on monthly groceries, they are just downright selfish. And it is that selfishness within them that creates this complaint. And now I want to present the second scenario about the selfish wives. Here, these wives have the generous husbands. I tell you, they choose their partners well. Yeah. They have the generous husbands. He's the man who's ever ready to put his hand into his pocket and help anyone. He's ready to lend a helping hand. He wants to help his own parents, his family, people that he knows that aren't doing well in life, that need help. And since he has the means to do so, he wishes to extend his help. Because Allah Ta'ala has blessed him with that.
Subhanallah.
However, the selfish wife will not allow that to happen. His money is only good enough for her children, maybe for her family to an extent, for their comforts, for their luxuries. She fights with him. She holds him accountable. If he even spends money on his family, she wants to know, what did you buy? How much did you give your mother, for example? Why did you give her again this month, etc.? She has a whole real problem with him giving or spending money on his family of origin or anyone outside of her unit. So now that I've shared both scenarios with you, I've told you about the wife, I've told you about the husband, and how each one in their own right are financially selfish. I want to answer your question, because your question is, what are the deeper emotional and psychological factors that are linked to this behavior? So husbands and wives are financially selfish because of their own past insecurities, their fear of scarcity. If I give, I'm going to lose what I have. Perhaps when they were growing up, they didn't have much in their household with their parents. And so now you marry someone that has, and you feel like, oh no, we can't give this away. We need this because there's a whole future and a whole life ahead. There's also underlying fears. There's also financial instability and deprivation in their lives that has led them to become hoarders. Do you know how many people are actually hoarding everything that they have with the fear of letting it go, even though they no longer have a need for it? This is also a form of selfishness, because that hoarding or opening your cupboard and seeing that you have everything for the past 10 years makes you feel secure, makes them feel secure within themselves. And they like preparing for some eventuality of not having. Should the day come where I don't have, then I have all of this. It's a mindset. So in many, it's also a need for control and power. So that's a whole different spectrum where a spouse is able to exert control in the marriage and show the other person who is the boss. And this indicates that they have self-esteem issues within themselves that they obviously haven't worked on. They have trust and attachment issues. They have learned behaviors. They have fear of loss of identity. And these are also deeper underlying egoic factors that contribute towards that behavior.
So there's a lot of things, a lot of factors that go into people that are sort of kanjus, I think the term is called. When you become miserly with your money. So I guess there is sort of some sort of mental, some deeper sort of emotional a state that makes a person the way that they are. Are people born like that, or is it just the environmental factors or what they observe from their parents?
Habits.
Is it habits?
Yeah, learned habits as you go along, and we'll talk about it now.
Yeah, so the basically, so money often becomes a tool for power in marriages, like mentioned, whether it's a husband withholding funds or wife restricting a husband's spending. But for the partner who feels financially dependent or restricted, there's often a buildup of silent resentment. So how can this resentment manifest over time? And what steps can couples take to address it before it erodes the foundation of the relationship? So how does a couple come together, talk about the financial situation? And my question is, is it necessary for them to discuss their financial gains? How much I'm making? How much is she making? Should we have a joint bank account? Is it okay that we spend? Is that dangerous in today's day and age, or is it something that should be transparent for both parties?
Okay, so the power dynamics around money in anyone's life. Money is a very sensitive topic. You can be friends until the topic of money comes up, right? So imagine that dynamic now in a marriage. So it definitely influences the interactions in a marriage between husband and wife. Because what happens is, over a period of time, couples begin to lose respect and equality in the relationship. If they're bickering over money and finances for years on end, you lose respect and you lose equality. So this goes completely out of balance. If a husband is being restricted from spending money on his own mother for 15 years straight. So he does do it, but then there's always drama associated with it. Then eventually he will build a sort of resentment because he's answerable for the amount that he spends, what he spends on it, what did he buy, and if he has to provide reasons for it, of course it's going to be okay for him for the first 5-10 years. He's used to the flow of how things work. But as time goes further on, perhaps his mother passes away, a sort of resentment, because you do not forget the things that you embed into the subconscious mind. So he's going to have this resentment towards his wife, and especially this is going to surface later on. And at the same time, the wife who spends or spent her entire life dependent on her husband, right, financially, because she opted to stay at home, take care of the kids, take care of the household while he goes out to work. And he questions her every cent that she spends. What did you do with the money? I don't have. Stop bothering me. Stop asking me. Or every time she needs to walk on eggshells or prep herself for the next time she needs to ask him for something to be paid. Again, that's going to bring up resentment, because over a period of time, she's going to build that resentment. So it's definitely having an impact on the marriage. So I've spoken to many women in my years of practice who suffer as a result of financial selfishness. Some have had to return clothes that they've bought for themselves or their children. Others have had to share meals when they eat out because the husband will absolutely not allow his wife or children to order their own individual meals, yet they drive in with the most fanciest cars. Believe me, you're smiling, Zahir.
No,
this is as real as can be.
Wow.
Others have had to bring back receipts and slips for their purchases to prove that, yes, I did buy that. Some have had to print their bank statements. I've done an EF to you this month. What did you do with the money? What did you do with the budget? So it is really hectic out there. The persistent disputes over budgets, or a sense of imbalance where one partner feels undervalued, powerless, undermined, will definitely rear its ugly eventual head in this marriage. The financial constraint, emotions, and the dysfunction in communication all contribute towards it. So this can also make one lose their self-esteem. Because the habit of answering to someone for money, it gives you a certain feeling that is not very nice. It does something to your level of confidence. So respect and collaboration in the marriage give way to power struggles where you can no longer make joint decisions as a couple, because there's always going to be a fight where money is concerned. The question, does this damage the relationship? Absolutely yes, Zahir. Does this damage the harmony, the peace, and the equality in the marriage? Undoubtedly.
What about the question that I asked about should the sort of couples be aware of how much each is earning on a monthly basis or annual basis? Should one have access to a fund? Should there be a joint account? Does this create more problems? Does it give solutions? What's your views on that?
It depends on the dynamic of the relationship. If both spouses are working, it also depends on the communication and how the relationship started to begin with. So there's so many factors, and we can go into so much detail regarding how the couple got together, on what conditions. Was it an arranged marriage? Did they fall in love? What agreements were in place prior to that marriage regarding finance? Did the wife decide after marriage, well, I don't want to work anymore? So there's a lot of questions that need to be asked, because every situation and every marriage will have their own experiences and contributing factors that have to be taken into consideration. But it is very important to have open communication and transparency regarding finance in a marriage.
You've given us examples. What about a situation where the husband is the breadwinner, things take a toll, he gets retrenched, the wife starts working, then she becomes the breadwinner of the house? How's that dynamic change? Because apparently, people say, oh, if the man's not earning, then he's not respected in the household.
So it depends on perspective. So what are her values as a wife? Because if she understands that this is a temporary situation because he was providing before and he was able to bring bread to the table and the circumstances have changed, so then you look beyond. You look at the understanding that you share as a couple, the communication that you share, the empathy. Is he still there for you? Is he supporting you in other ways if you're the breadwinner? Is he helping out in the house, or is he sitting back and doing nothing about his financial situation? So again, every single situation will have their own dynamic based on what that couple. Also, what are the ages? Different age groups of your life. I personally feel that when you are earlier on married in life, that a wife should contribute. That's my personal opinion. That if she is working and earning and is able to, and that things are tough out there and we're getting on our feet and dad's not giving us everything, then why not?
Well, I think in today's day and age, when both parents have to work, because the cost of living is very expensive, even raising a child nowadays, I've seen the price of nappies. So there's a lot of factors to take into consideration. So you're speaking a lot of sense. Brother Ahmed says, I met the fro through the auntie network. Does that count? I don't know. He's just asking some questions of you. But like you mentioned with the age factor, does it play a role? I mean, the younger the wife, the more the husband has to look after the wife. Or
I think that people have too many belief systems that they need to break free from.
So what is it? I mean, people they've been brought up in a sort of patriarchal system. They feel like, okay, the man is the head of the house. He calls the shots. A female has her role. But the dynamics has changed in today's day and age.
Absolutely. Yeah. Everything's changed these days.
So how do we adapt to a certain environment? I mean, like you've brought on topics.
I strongly recommend premarital counseling. I have couples in my rooms all of the time prior to marriage. And you'll be surprised by how much is discovered and uncovered and unpacked in those sessions, because she'd be like, no, I don't think I'll be able to do that. So it's very relevant questions. Like if my friends want to go out, because now you decide to get married in your 19, 20 and you're still youthful age. And the guy says, so my friends want to go out for the weekend. And I want to go with them because this is something we're doing. Will you allow it? And then she's like, no, that's not happening. So we be digressing here, but premarital counseling, finance, money, has to be a huge part of that discussion. And if families are not having that discussion in advance prior to committing to marriage, then I see that becoming a huge problem later on.
Absolutely. Now, cultural or even societal norms often shape how couples view money as well as gender roles in marriage, since we've discussed that. How can these external pressures influence financial behavior, and how can couples sort of navigate these expectations to create a system that works for both?
So, Zahir, that depends on how desperate or eager individuals are to remedy themselves and then their marriages. You must want to do it. So in some situations, you have husbands who, let's say they are now well into their marriage and they're financially stable and they're doing really well. And now you've been with this woman for like 15, 20 years, you know her habits, you know how far and to what degree you've pushed the boundaries of control financially, and you know how much more you can take advantage of her. In that way, no matter how much she complains, you know, as the wife says, I have nowhere to go. Where do I start now in my life? I've already built an entire life now with this man, in this home, with this family. I don't know where to go. I can't go back to my parents. They're grown old. I can't go back to work. It's been 20 years since I've worked. And so I'm stuck. And so when the husband knows this, he has a choice to either say, I actually want to take my wife's feelings into consideration and remedy the situation and do something about it. Or he's going to say, I really don't care. I'm happy with the status quo and things will continue as it is. And if she doesn't like it, she can leave. Because of course, in his mind, he's convinced that she's not going to leave. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So it's also, each person needs to take this seriously. Take what seriously? Their spouse's emotions regarding the situation. So it depends on how much does the spouse actually care for the other person's feelings, because there are many that, like I said, that could not care less if the spouse was happy or unhappy, miserable or not miserable, have money or don't have money. I'm busy with my life. I give you what you get. You can complain, but it continues. The habits continue. So it's my money, my rules kind of mindset, sort of attitude. But for those who do value their partners, who do hold their partners in high regard, who do have respect, and actually do want to improve the financial relationship within the marriage, then there's definitely helpful tools to be considered. There's definitely help for any individual who wants to make any sort of change in their life. So creating a non-judgmental space is very important, where both parties feel comfortable to talk. If couples are not comfortable to talk about money in a marriage, that in itself is a huge red flag. If you feel, we're only married for a year, 2 years now, we can't talk about money, that needs to be urgently and deeply addressed. Even if you're talking about little budgets.
Okay. Yeah, that was the question. Like what sort of conversation about money should they be talking about?
Transparency, income. I've had women tell me 5 years, 6 years after marriage, I have no idea what my husband earns. I have no idea what he spends the money on. I just know that I'm living here and everything's found. And later on, they find out, for example, he's broke, or they need to sell the house, or they need to sell the car. And then I ask her, were you sleeping all these years? Because now this place that you've created and you call your home for 10 years, and you've created this whole, how women are, they nest and they create this whole little family and in the home and comforts. And then one day out of the blue, the house is going or the car is going, and they don't know why. They have no idea. They have no idea of what's happening in their husband's life. So it's not healthy. It's important to at least have an idea of, I understand this is our income. I understand these are our budgets. This is what I have to work with. And not the idea where your husband's making you think or believe he's rich or he's poor, and you living according to that. And one day you get surprised to hear that he's been living off credit all of those years. You've both been living off credit. So that transparency is important. And I recommend that if you marry young, have the discussion from young, whether you're discussing a budget for 5,000, 10,000, 15,000, create a non-judgmental space where both of you can feel comfortable to talk, because the husband and the wife must be able to express their feelings, their concerns, their expectations of each other, their thoughts about money freely, without holding back, without walking on eggshells, without feeling embarrassed. There is nothing to be embarrassed about where discussion about money is concerned. Host a monthly money meeting with your partner. Keep that dialogue open and progressive, whether it's on a date night. For many couples, especially young couples, where both partners are working hard. Like I said, a lot of women today are qualified, are working, are earning well equally, some more than men. They are contributing towards the household. They want to make it a comfortable experience. So joint budgeting, joint financial plans with goals in place work a great deal. For example, if I know I'm a young part of a young marriage, and I know my husband has goals to complete his studies, and a portion of his income is going towards that, I can't say, well, you're married now,
you don't need to study.
You don't need to study. Give me that money. I need to buy stuff at the end of the month. So you need to, there's actually a lot of good and advantages that come out of goal planning and being transparent, because if you as a wife care enough for his education or the goals that he set, you're going to make provisions to say, okay, we'll have less of this so you can have that income or extra saving to pay towards your education, because later on there's going to be benefit for it. So sharing information about your income, your expenses, your goals, transparency from early on in the marriage is key. Even if you have financial commitments towards parents, disclose it to your partner.
So you should be so the spouse should be aware if you are sort of spending on certain items that they're not aware of initially, so they know exactly what's happening with the financial situation. Let's talk about the kids very quickly. We got about 3 minutes left. 2 minutes actually. So just very quickly, when children grow up witnessing financial control or selfishness between their parents, how does this sort of shape their own attitudes towards money and relationships in the future? And what can parents do to sort of model healthier financial behaviors for their kids?
Very important question, because I feel many parents think that children are not part of the observation of what's happening in the household. Children don't listen to what you tell them to do. They watch what you do. And so they're definitely going to learn these behaviors. So when our children spend a large number of their lives witnessing parents' need for financial control, for power, for manipulation, selfishness, they're undoubtedly going to internalize the behaviors as normal and expected. And these early experiences will shape their own attitudes towards money, impact their own relationships with money later on. They will grow up learning those behaviors, and they will associate money with power struggles, ego, control, manipulation. Guess what? They then do it in their own relationships, and the vicious cycle continues. So they become controlling adults, selfish adults. Some who have a generous parent who they've been watching their own whole life will become those that become very generous, very giving, very caring adults who enjoy sharing, inshallah.
So don't tell your kids, no, I got no money. Don't come ask me. That's going to be something that's going to be instilled with them. So yeah, monkey see, monkey do, as they say. But Sister Adila, fantastic conversation. I think it's a big eye-opener for a lot of listeners listening. And for those who wants to request for this podcast to play for the husband at night.
I'm requesting for it first. Not for my husband, for me, so I can send it to my clients.
Send it to the clients there. So this is the man, Brother Asif. He's making sure that we're going to get this sorted out. Alhamdulillah.
Amazing.
But Jazakallah khair, Sister Adila. And if they want to connect with you and find out more information, what information?
The Coach South Africa on all channels. All social media channels.
Check her. She's boiling this auntie, man. Jazakallah, Sister Adila. Thank you so much for joining us. And we'll catch you again next week, inshallah, for another edition right here on the social network.